He can't be
Hansu had spent
serious.
his last coin on a ship that
Did he
everyone
just
said
buy
was
the
garbage.
Ethelred?
The auction
Hulk
hall
is
on Dock 9
cursed.
was cold and smelled like rust. Nobody bid against him. The old ship sat in a scrapyard orbit, dark and silent, covered in dust 3 centimeters thick. The auctioneer, a tired man with a metal arm, laughed when Hansu raised his hand. You sure? That hull has been floating dead for 40 years. Nobody even knows what it is. Some call it a mining barge. Some call it junk. Hansu did not laugh back. He had read old records nobody else bothered to check. Buried under layers of false registry data was a single line that made his hands shake when he first found it: hull class unknown. Point of origin, Earth. Pre-Alliance construction. Before humans joined the Alliance, before humans even had proper starships, someone had built this thing. And it was big. Bigger than any warship currently flying. He paid every credit he had. The auctioneer shrugged and signed the papers. When Hansu first walked through the airlock, his flashlight beam cut through decades of dark. Dust floated like snow. The corridors were white, built for something heavier than the light frigates humans used now. He walked for an hour before he found the bridge. When he touched the main console, old systems groaned awake, like something waking from a long sleep. Words appeared on a cracked screen, in old human script. Dreadnought class. Projektname, Iron Dawn. Status, intakt. Weapons, offline. Core, stable. Hansu sat down slowly in the captain's chair, heart pounding. He was 28 years old, a nobody pilot who fixed engines for a living, and he was sitting in the first dreadnought humanity had ever built. Built before the war that almost wiped humans from the galaxy. Built and then lost, forgotten, buried under scrap and rumor. He did not tell anyone yet. He wanted to understand it first. For 3 weeks he worked alone, cleaning filters, replacing burnt wires, coaxing the reactor back to life piece by piece. The ship groaned and complained, but it worked. Old human engineers had built something tough. Something built to survive. He named her Iron Dawn, the name she already carried. It was on a routine supply run, 3 months later, flying Iron Dawn slowly through a quiet trade lane, that Hansu picked up a distress signal. Weak, broken, coming from a small pod tumbling through space near a dead moon. No registry. No flag. Just a small craft leaking oxygen, spinning out of control. He almost ignored it. Iron Dawn was not ready for trouble. Half her systems were still being repaired. But something in the signal, a soft frightened voice speaking in a language he did not know, made him turn the ship anyway. Autopilot, match speed with that pod, he said. Slow and careful. The ship responded better than he expected, thrusters firing with smooth, practiced ease, like the old Dreadnought remembered how to hunt even after 40 years of sleep. He caught the pod in the cargo bay just as its hull cracked open. Inside, curled up and shaking, was a girl who was clearly not human. Her skin had a soft blue-gray color, like early morning sky. Her eyes were large, gold-colored, and full of fear. She wore a torn flight suit with symbols he did not recognize. Hansu pulled off his helmet and knelt down slowly, hands open, showing he meant no harm. She flinched back against the wall of the cargo bay, breathing hard, whispering words in a language full of soft clicking sounds. Easy, Hansu said gently, even though he knew she could not understand him. You're safe now. Nobody's going to hurt you. He did not know her name yet. He did not know she was running from a war. He only knew that her eyes, white and gold and terrified, looked at him like she was trying to decide if he was another monster or something else entirely. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, she reached out one shaking hand toward him, and Hansu reached back. Her hand was cold and small in his. She let out a breath, like she had been holding it for a long time, and her shoulders relaxed just a little. Hansu smiled at her, slow and careful, and pointed to himself. Hansu, he said. She blinked at him, confused. He repeated it, tapping his chest. Hansu. Understanding lit up her golden eyes. She touched her own chest, hesitant. Nera, she whispered. Nera, Hansu repeated, and she almost smiled, though fear still sat heavy behind her eyes. He brought her to the medical bay, an old room full of strange equipment he barely understood himself. He found a working scanner and ran it over her, relieved to see no serious injuries, only exhaustion and cold. He gave her warm food from the ship's stores, simple rice and broth, and watched her eat slowly, still watching him like she expected him to change his mind about helping her. Nera did not sleep that first night. She sat in the corner of the small guest room, knees pulled to her chest, watching the door. Hansu understood. Whatever she had escaped from must have been terrible enough that trust would not come easy. He left a blanket outside her door and a small light on in the corridor, then retreated to his own quarters, giving her the space she clearly needed, even though part of him worried about her sitting alone and afraid in an unfamiliar ship full of strange sounds and shadows. In the morning, he found her asleep at last, curled against the wall, the blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. He did not wake her. Instead he quietly prepared more food, set it within easy reach, and went to continue his repair work on the ship's failing life support filters, letting the low hum of tools and machinery fill the silence of the empty corridors. Over the following days, Iron Dawn's translation software, old but still functional, slowly began to piece together her language. It was rough at first, single words appearing on a screen between them. Nera came from a people called the Vantel, from a system 3 jumps away, a peaceful trading race that had recently been attacked by raiders looking to strip their worlds of resources. Her transport ship had been destroyed. She did not know if her family had escaped. Hansu listened to her broken words and broken sentences with patience, never rushing her, never pushing. He showed her around the ship instead, letting her see the old bridge, the long corridors, the strange dreadnought that had somehow found her tumbling and alone in the black. Nera ran her hand over the old control panels, curious despite her fear. Big ship, she said, in slowly improving standard, the language most of the Alliance used to communicate. Very big, Hansu agreed. Very old too. Nobody wanted her. I got her for almost nothing. Why nobody want? Nera asked, tilting her head. People thought she was junk. Broken. Not worth fixing. Nera looked at him for a long moment, something thoughtful behind her golden eyes. Sometimes broken things just need someone to try, she said quietly. Hansu felt something warm settle in his chest at that. He was not sure if she was talking about the ship anymore. Slowly, over the next 2 weeks, Nera began to relax. She helped him clean old wiring, her small nimble hands good at delicate work his thicker fingers struggled with. She hummed strange, beautiful songs while she worked, songs from her homeworld, and Hansu found himself listening more than working sometimes, caught by the sound of her voice. She taught him words in her language. He taught her human jokes, most of which she did not understand at first, until one day she laughed for the first time, a bright surprised sound that filled the quiet ship like sunlight. Hansu decided right then that he wanted to hear that sound again and again. There were harder moments too, moments that tested the fragile trust growing between them. One night, a loud clang echoed through the ship as a loose panel finally gave way in the cargo bay, and Nera bolted upright from sleep, breathing hard, eyes wide with the kind of fear that came from memory rather than the present moment. Hansu found her curled against the wall of her small room, shaking, and he sat down a careful distance away, not touching her, just present. It's just a loose panel, he said softly. Nothing is attacking us. You're safe. Nera did not answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. Sound like weapon fire. Sound like when raiders attack transport. I still hear it, sometimes. In my sleep. Hansu nodded slowly, understanding more than she probably realized. I can't imagine what that was like, he said honestly. But you don't have to pretend to be fine around me. Not ever. If you need to talk about it, I'll listen. If you don't, that's fine too. I just want you to know you're not alone with it anymore. Nela looked at him for a long moment, something shifting behind her golden eyes, some wall coming down brick by brick. Thank you, she whispered. Nobody said that to me before. Everyone always want me to be strong, be brave, keep moving. You just let me be scared. Being scared doesn't make you weak, Hansu said. It just makes you human. Or, I guess, Vante, in your case. He smiled a little at his own joke, and to his relief, Nela let out a soft, tired laugh. After that night, something between them changed, deepened into something steadier. Nela began sharing small pieces of her past more freely, stories of her father teaching her to read star charts, of long trade routes through peaceful systems before the raiders ever came, of a childhood spent among the stars much like his own, despite the vast differences between their species and cultures. Hansu, in turn, opened up about his own life, about growing up the youngest of 4 siblings in a crowded orbital habitat, always more interested in old ship schematics buried in public archives than the games other children played. He told her about finding the buried record of Iron Dawn's true origin, the thrill of discovery that had driven him to spend every credit he had on a ship everyone else thought was worthless. You take big risk, Nela said one afternoon, running her hand over an old control panel they were repairing together. Everyone says ship is junk. You believe different anyway. I've always been a little stubborn like that, Hansu admitted. My mother used to say I'd argue with a wall if I thought the wall was wrong. Nela smiled at that, a soft fond expression that made Hansu's heart skip slightly. Good thing, she said. Or maybe I'm still tumbling through space right now, nobody hear my call. I'll always hear your call, Hansu said before he could stop himself, the words slipping out sincere and unplanned. Nela's cheeks darkened with that same shy blue blush he had come to recognize, and she looked away, though the small smile remained on her lips for the rest of the afternoon. Weeks turned into a month. Nela no longer sat in corners watching doors. She walked the halls of Iron Dawn like she belonged there, humming her homeworld songs, helping Hansu repair section after section of the old Dreadnought. Together they got the secondary reactor running. Together they cleared out 3 levels of dust and debris. The ship that had been dead for 40 years slowly came back to life under their combined hands. One evening, while they sat together in the observation deck, watching stars slide by in silence, Nela asked him a question that had clearly been sitting in her mind for some time. Why you help me, she asked. You not know me. Could be danger. Could be trick. Hansu thought about it honestly before answering. Because when I heard your voice on that signal, you sounded scared. And scared is a feeling everyone understands, no matter what language you speak. I couldn't just fly past that. Nela was quiet for a moment, looking at him with an expression he could not fully read. On my homeworld, she said slowly, we have saying. The person who helps stranger with nothing to gain, that person has good spirit inside. Do you believe that? Hansu asked. I believe it now, Nela said softly, and looked away, her cheeks darkening to a deeper blue, an expression Hansu was slowly learning meant she was embarrassed or shy. He found himself thinking about her constantly. The way she tilted her head when curious. The way she hummed without noticing she was doing it. The way her golden eyes lit up whenever they fixed something together, like every small victory was something worth celebrating. He had never felt this way about anyone before, human or otherwise, and it both confused and thrilled him. Nela, for her part, had stopped flinching at sudden noises. She had stopped watching doors. Instead she watched Hansu, when she thought he was not looking, with something soft and warm in her gaze. One night, working late fixing a stubborn wiring panel in the engine room, their hands brushed together reaching for the same tool. Both of them froze. Nero looked up at him, golden eyes wide, and Hansu felt his heart pound loud in his chest. "Sorry," he said quietly, though he did not pull his hand away. "Not sorry," Nera whispered back, and gently, carefully, she laced her fingers through his. They sat there for a long moment in the quiet hum of the engine room, hands joined, saying nothing because nothing needed to be said. Outside the hull, the stars continued their slow silent dance, indifferent to the small warm moment happening inside the old dreadnought that both of them now called home. "Nera," Hansu finally said, breaking the silence. "I don't know what this is between us. I don't know your customs, your rules. But I know I don't want you to leave when we find your people." Nera squeezed his hand tighter. "Maybe," she said softly, "I not want to leave either." That peace did not last long. 3 days later, the ship's old sensors, freshly repaired, picked up a signal that made Hansu's blood run cold. A raider fleet, 5 ships strong, moving on a direct course toward a nearby system. Nera recognized the fleet markings instantly from the sensor image, her face going pale. "Those the ones," she said, voice shaking. "Those the ones who attack my people. Who destroy my transport." Hansu pulled up the star charts. The raider fleet was heading toward a small moon base, a refugee camp where survivors of the earlier attacks had gathered. Nera's hands trembled as she pointed at the base's coordinates. "My family," she whispered. "They sent message before ship destroyed. They say they're going there. To that base." Hansu felt his stomach twist. 5 raider ships, each armed with modern weapons, against a refugee base with no real defenses. An Iron Dawn, a 40-year-old dreadnought only half repaired, weapons systems still mostly offline. "How long until they arrive?" he asked. 6 hours, Nera said, checking the numbers herself, standard numbers she had learned quickly from working beside him. "Maybe less." Hansu looked at the ship's damage reports. Weapons offline. Shields at 60%. Main engine still not fully trusted for hard maneuvers. Every rational part of his mind told him this was suicide. He was one man with an untested ship against a real combat fleet. But he looked at Nera's face, pale with fear for people she loved, and he knew there was no other choice he could make. "We're not going to make it there faster than them if we go slow," Hansu said, already moving toward the engine room. "We need full power. Now." For the next 4 hours, they worked without stopping. Nera crawled through access tunnels too narrow for Hansu, splicing wires with her nimble fingers exactly where he directed her. Hansu ran between console and console, coaxing weapons systems that had slept for decades back into grudging life. Sweat soaked through his shirt. His hands were raw from cut wires and sharp metal edges. Neither of them stopped to rest. "Main cannon status?" Hansu called out, voice tight with tension. "Charging," Nera called back from deep in the access tunnel. "Slow, but charging." Old systems groaned and sparked as decades of dust and rust were forced to work again. Twice a console caught fire and Hansu had to smother it fast with a fire suppressant canister, cursing the whole time. Twice Nera called out warnings about power surges that could have fried half the ship's remaining systems if not caught in time. By the 4th hour, shields sat at 75%. Main cannon was operational, though untested. Point defense guns along the hull crackled weakly to life, enough to handle small fighters if not much else. It was not everything. It was not enough, not really. But it was something. Hansu stood on the bridge, Nera beside him, both of them exhausted and filthy with engine grease, staring at the star chart showing the raider fleet closing in on the refugee base. "We only got 2 hours before they get there," Nera said quietly. "We're not going to beat them there in time with normal speed." Hansu set his jaw, thinking of the old dreadnought's true purpose, buried under decades of dust and neglect. A weapon built to fight, built to protect. He placed his hand on the worn captain's chair and made his decision. Then we're not going normal speed, he said. Overcharge the main engine. Push everything we have into it. If this old girl was really built to fight a war, she can handle one hard push. Nayla looked at him, worry plain in her golden eyes, but she nodded and moved to the engine controls without argument. I trust you, she said simply. And I trust her. The engines howled as Iron Dawn surged forward, faster than she had moved in 40 years, racing across the black toward a fight neither of them was fully ready for, but both of them were determined to win. They arrived just as the Raider fleet began its attack run on the refugee base. 5 ships broke formation, moving to encircle the small moon station, weapons already glowing hot and ready to fire. Hansu did not hesitate. He dropped Iron Dawn directly between the Raiders and the base, using the Dreadnought's massive hull as a shield. This is Captain Hansu of the human ship Iron Dawn, he broadcast on open channel, voice steady despite his pounding heart. Turn away now or we will stop you. Laughter crackled back over the comm from the lead Raider ship. That old wreck? You think that can stop us? Guess we'll find out, Hansu muttered and gave the order. The main cannon fired, a beam of raw energy that had not been used in 40 years, striking the lead Raider ship dead center. The Raiders' shields flared and failed in one bright flash, the ship spinning off, crippled and smoking. The laughter over the comm channel stopped immediately. The remaining 4 ships turned their full attention on Iron Dawn, weapons blazing. The old Dreadnought shuddered under the impact, alarms screaming through every corridor. Nira, strapped into the secondary control station, called out damage reports as fast as she could read them. Shields down to 40%. Deck 3 losing pressure. Seal it off, Hansu ordered, hands flying across the weapons console, aiming the point defense guns at the smaller fighter craft swarming closer. Divert power from non-essential systems to shields. Explosions rocked the ship. Sparks rained down from a burst conduit near the bridge ceiling. Nayla ducked instinctively, then straightened back up, refusing to abandon her post despite the chaos around them. Hansu glanced at her for one brief moment, pride and fear tangled together in his chest, before turning back to the fight. 2 Raider ships closed in fast, flanking Iron Dawn on both sides, clearly planning to finish the crippled Dreadnought quickly. Hansu made a split-second decision, one that went against every careful instinct in his body. Full power to forward shields, brace for impact, he shouted, and pushed the ship directly forward, between the 2 flanking Raiders, close enough that their own weapons' fire risked hitting each other. The gamble worked. One Raider ship, firing wildly to avoid friendly fire, clipped its ally's engine block instead. The damaged Raider spun out of control, crashing into the second ship in a chain reaction of fire and debris. 2 more Raiders down, in one desperate move. Only 2 Raider ships remained, along with the crippled lead vessel drifting nearby. Shields on Iron Dawn sat at 15%, red warning lights flashing across every console. Nera's hands shook as she monitored the failing systems, but her voice remained steady when she spoke. Hansu. If shields fail, next hit finish us. Hansu knew that. He also knew there was no retreating now, not with the refugee base still in danger behind them. He gripped the weapon controls tight, his knuckles white. Then we make sure there isn't a next hit, he said. He fired everything Iron Dawn had left, every point defense gun, the main cannon still slowly recharging its final shot, straight at the closest Raider ship. The enemy vessel's shields cracked, then shattered entirely under the combined barrage, the ship going dark and drifting, defeated. The last Raider ship, seeing 3 of its allies destroyed and 1 crippled, broke off its attack and fled into the dark, engines flaring as it retreated at full speed. Silence fell across the bridge, broken only by the groan of damaged systems and Hansu's own ragged breathing. Nela unbuckled from her station and rushed to his side, pulling him into a tight embrace, her whole body shaking with the release of built-up fear. "We did it," she whispered against his shoulder. "We really did it." Hansu held her close, heart still pounding from the fight, relief flooding through him stronger than any victory he had ever felt before. "We did," he agreed softly, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Together." Iron Dawn limped toward the refugee base at half power, hull scorched black in places, one entire deck sealed off and venting slowly into space. But she had held together. She had done exactly what she was built to do all those decades ago, before humans had even known such ships existed. She had protected the people who needed protecting. The base commander, an older Vantal man with grey markings across his blue-grey skin, met them at the docking bay personally, flanked by a small crowd of relieved survivors. When the airlock opened and Hansu stepped through, supporting Neera, who was limping slightly from a bruised leg she had gotten during the fight, the crowd fell into stunned silence. Then a cry rang out from somewhere in the back of the group. "Neera!" A woman pushed through the crowd, older, with the same golden eyes as Neera, tears already streaming down her face. Neera let go of Hansu's arm and ran forward, ignoring the pain in her leg, throwing herself into her mother's arms. The two of them held each other, sobbing with relief, while the rest of the crowd watched with matching tears in their own eyes. Hansu stood back, giving them space, feeling a strange mixture of joy and quiet fear settle in his chest. He was happy beyond words that Neera had her family back. But some small selfish part of him worried what that meant for the bond they had built together over the past weeks. Neera's mother, once she had composed herself, turned to look at Hansu with careful, assessing eyes. She said something quickly in her own language, and Neera answered, gesturing toward Hansu with clear affection in her voice and expression. Whatever she said made her mother's expression soften considerably. The older woman approached Hansu and, to his surprise, bowed her head slightly in a gesture he did not fully understand but recognized as respectful. "Neera, tell me," she said in halting standard, clearly having learned some words from trading with humans before, "you saved her life. You save us all today. Vantal people not forget this." "I just did what anyone would do," Hansu said, a little embarrassed by the attention. "Not anyone," Neera's mother said firmly, shaking her head. "Many would fly away from danger, not toward. You different." Over the following days, while Iron Dawn's damage was slowly repaired with help from base engineers grateful for the rescue, Hansu got to know Neera's family and community better. He learned that Vantal culture placed enormous value on debts of honor, and that the community now considered themselves bonded to him in gratitude, though he tried repeatedly to wave away any formal repayment. What he could not wave away, no matter how hard he tried, was the growing fear sitting quietly in his chest. Neera was home now, among her own people, safe and cared for. He had no real claim on her, no right to ask her to leave this behind and continue traveling through dangerous space with him on a barely repaired antique warship. The rational part of him began preparing to say goodbye. He found Neera one evening, sitting alone on a small observation platform overlooking the base, watching the stars. He sat down beside her quietly, unsure how to start the conversation, weighing on his mindestance. "Your family seems happy to have you home," he said finally. "They are," Neera agreed, glancing at him. "And I happy to see them. But..." She paused, searching for words. "Home not feel complete anymore. Something missing." Hansu's heart clenched. "Neera, you don't have to explain. I understand if you want to stay here, with your people. You've been through so much. You deserve to be somewhere safe." Neera turned to face him fully, golden eyes fierce with an emotion he had not seen from her before. "You think I won't stay because safe?" she asked. "Hansu. Safe not same as happy. I safe here. But happy was fixing wires with you. Happy was hearing you laugh at that joke. Happy was your hand in mine in engine room." Hansu's breath caught in his throat. "Neera. I'm not asking permission to feel this, she continued, voice growing steadier with each word. I telling you. I choose you. I choose ship with weird name and captain who buy junk nobody want. I choose that life, if you still want me in ET. Hansu reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands, golden eyes meeting his with open vulnerability and hope. I have wanted you in it since the moment you took my hand in that cargo bay, he said softly. I was just too scared to say it out loud. Then say it now, Nera whispered. I love you, Hansu said, the words feeling both terrifying and completely right leaving his mouth. I don't care that we come from different worlds, different languages, different everything. I love you, Nera. Nera's eyes filled with tears, though her smile was brighter than Hansu had ever seen it. I love you too, she said. Since long time now. Since you look at me in cargo bay like I not monster, like I just scared girl who need help. They kissed then, slow and soft under the wide field of unfamiliar stars, two people from entirely different corners of the galaxy who had somehow found exactly what they needed in each other. News of the battle spread faster than either of them expected. Survivors from the refugee base told their story to passing traders, who told it to other traders, until within a month the tale of the human ship that had single-handedly driven off a raider fleet had reached every corner of that stretch of space. Some versions of the story exaggerated wildly, claiming Iron Dawn had destroyed a dozen ships instead of 3. Others focused on the strange fact that a human, a species still considered minor and unimportant by most of the wider galaxy, had been flying a ship unlike anything else in known space. It did not take long for the Alliance itself to take notice. A formal request arrived on Iron Dawn's communication system 3 weeks after the battle, asking Hansu to bring the ship to a nearby Alliance research station for official inspection. He almost refused, wary of losing the ship he had fought so hard to repair, but the tone of the request was respectful, even hopeful, and curiosity eventually won out. Nera came with him, of course. She had made it clear in the weeks since their reunion with her family that she intended to stay by his side, whatever came next. Her mother had cried again, this time from a mixture of pride and worry, but had ultimately given her blessing, along with a small woven bracelet in the Vandal tradition, meant to bring safe travels to those embarking on a new journey. At the research station, a team of Alliance engineers and historians studied Iron Dawn for nearly 2 weeks, running scans, checking records, cross-referencing old pre-Alliance human archives that had mostly been lost during humanity's turbulent early years among the stars. What they found left even the most experienced among them stunned. Iron Dawn was not simply an old ship. She was the very first Dreadnought-class vessel ever constructed by humanity, built during a desperate period before humans had even secured a stable place among the galaxy's other species. Records suggested she had been built in secret, a defensive project meant to protect a struggling and vulnerable Earth from potential threats, only to be lost during a chaotic period of internal human conflict decades ago, drifting quietly through the black ever since, waiting for someone to find her again. Do you understand what this means? One of the Alliance historians said to Hansu, practically vibrating with excitement. This ship predates almost every piece of technology we currently understand about early human engineering. She's a piece of living history. And she still works. She works because we fixed her, Hansu said simply, glancing at Nera with a small proud smile. Piece by piece. The Alliance offered him a significant sum to hand the ship over for study and preservation in a museum orbit. Hansu considered it seriously, knowing the historical value was immense, knowing the money would set him and Nera up comfortably for the rest of their lives. But when he stood on the bridge that had become as familiar to him as his own heartbeat, hand resting on the worn captain's chair, he found he could not do it. She's not just a museum piece, he told the Alliance representatives firmly. She's still flying. She still has a purpose. I won't let her just sit still and gather dust again. Nera squeezed his hand in silent support, and something in his tone must have convinced the representatives, because after some negotiation, they reached a different arrangement instead. Iron Dawn would remain Hansu's ship, registered and protected under Alliance law as an important historical vessel, but he would be free to fly her as he chose, so long as he allowed periodic study and cooperated with historians documenting her unique construction. In exchange, the Alliance would provide funding and expert assistance to fully repair and modernize her remaining damaged systems. It felt, to Hansu, like the perfect solution. Iron Dawn would live on, not frozen behind museum glass, but flying free among the stars exactly as she had been built to do, this time with someone who genuinely cared for her at the helm. The repairs took nearly 3 months. Alliance engineers came aboard in shifts, working alongside Hansu and Neera, replacing worn conduits, upgrading old systems while carefully preserving the historical integrity of the original design. Hansu insisted on keeping the captain's chair exactly as it was, scratches and all, along with the old analog dials on the auxiliary console that reminded him of the very first day he had walked aboard, alone and unsure of what he had found. Not everyone who came aboard during those months was kind. One senior engineer, a stiff, unfriendly man named Doyle, made his disapproval of Neera's presence clear from his very first day, speaking over her suggestions, dismissing her knowledge of the ship despite the months she had already spent repairing it before the Alliance ever arrived. He never said anything openly cruel, but the cold way he addressed her, the way his eyes lingered with obvious distaste whenever she and Hansu stood close together, said more than words ever could. One afternoon, Hansu overheard Doyle speaking quietly to another engineer near the cargo bay, unaware Hansu was close enough to hear. Strange thing, seeing a human captain so attached to an alien like that, Doyle said, voice low but not quite low enough. Historical ship like this deserves a proper human crew, not some outsider playing at engineer. Hansu felt anger flare hot and sudden in his chest, the kind of anger he rarely let himself feel. He stepped around the corner, voice sharp and controlled. Neera kept this ship alive for months before any of you arrived, he said. She rebuilt half the systems your team is currently taking credit for repairing. If you have a problem working alongside her, that's your problem to fix, not hers. Doyle's face reddened, caught off guard, but he said nothing further, simply nodding stiffly before walking away. Hansu found Neera later that evening, quiet and withdrawn in a way that worried him. You heard him, Hansu said gently, sitting beside her. Didn't you? Neera nodded slowly, not meeting his eyes. Not first time I hear such things, she admitted. Some people, human and otherwise, not comfortable seeing two different species together. I try not let it bother me. But sometimes it does. Hansu took her hand firmly in his. Doyle's opinion means nothing, he said. Not to me, and it shouldn't to you either. You belong on this ship exactly as much as I do, maybe more, considering how much of her you brought back to life with your own hands. Anyone who can't see that isn't worth listening to. You sure? Neera asked quietly. You sure you're not embarrassed? Having vent a wife, when you could have anyone from own kind? The question struck Hansu hard, revealing a fear she had clearly been carrying silently for some time. He turned to face her fully, holding both her hands now, making sure she saw the complete sincerity in his eyes. Neera, look at me. I have never once, not for a single second, been embarrassed to have you beside me. I am prouder to stand with you than I have ever been of anything else in my entire life. If anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me directly, because I will defend us, without hesitation, every single time. Tears gathered in Neera's golden eyes, relief and gratitude plain on her face. Okay, she whispered. Okay. I believe you. Word of the confrontation eventually reached the Alliance Oversight Committee, and to Hansu's quiet satisfaction, Doyle was reassigned to a different project shortly afterward, replaced by an engineer far more respectful of Neera's considerable skill and contribution. It was a small victory, but an important one, a clear signal that whatever challenges the wider galaxy might still throw at two people from such different worlds, they would face them together, unshaken. Neera threw herself into the work with the same quiet determination she brought to everything. She learned more about human engineering with each passing week, and in turn taught several of the Alliance engineers small pieces of Vantel wiring techniques that proved surprisingly useful for delicate repair work in tight spaces. By the time the repairs were finished, Iron Dawn gleamed with a strange mixture of old human steel and modern Alliance technology, a ship that honored her past while being fully capable of facing the future. During those months, Hansu and Neera's relationship deepened in the quiet, ordinary ways that mattered most. They shared meals together every evening, trading stories about their very different childhoods. Hansu learned that Neera had grown up on a small trading vessel much like the ones her people still used, learning early how to fix engines and read star charts from her father, who had passed away several years before the raider attacks began. Neera learned that Hansu had grown up in a crowded orbital habitat above Earth, the youngest of 4 siblings, always more interested in old ship schematics than the games other children played. They argued sometimes, as any couple does, usually over small things: Hansu's tendency to leave tools scattered across workbenches, Neera's insistence on rearranging the kitchen storage in ways that made sense to her but confused him completely. But every argument ended the same way, with laughter and understanding, because underneath every small disagreement sat a foundation of genuine respect and care that neither of them ever doubted. One quiet evening, several months after the repairs were finished, as Iron Dawn cruised smoothly through open space on a trade run they had taken together, Neera found Hansu on the observation deck, staring out at the stars with a thoughtful expression. "You thinking hard about something?" she said, settling beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I've been thinking about tradition," Hansu said slowly. "About what happens next for us." Neera tilted her head curiously. "What do you mean?" Hansu reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object he had been carrying for weeks, almost too nervous to bring it out until this exact moment. It was a simple ring, made from a small piece of Iron Dawn's original hull plating, carefully shaped and polished by an Alliance engineer who had become a close friend during the repairs, at Hansu's quiet request. "On Earth," Hansu explained, voice slightly unsteady, "when someone wants to promise their life to another person, they sometimes give a ring like this. It's not much. It's just metal. But I wanted it to be part of her. Part of where we found each other." Neera's eyes widened, understanding dawning slowly as she looked between the ring and Hansu's nervous expression. "Hansu," she whispered. "You asking me to bond with you? Forever?" "I'm asking if you'll marry me," Hansu said, using the human word carefully. "I know it's not the same as whatever ceremony your people Donnerstag. We can do both, if you want, honor both our traditions. I just know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you, flying beside you, fixing broken things together, whatever comes next." Tears gathered in Neera's golden eyes, but her smile was radiant, brighter than Hansu had ever seen it. "Yes," she said immediately, without hesitation. "Yes, I marry you, Hansu. 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, hands shaking slightly with emotion, and she threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time, the sound echoing warmly through the quiet observation deck. They were married 3 months later, on the same moon base where Neera's family had settled after the raider attacks. The ceremony blended both their traditions in a way that felt entirely natural, as if the universe itself had been waiting for someone to combine them. Neera's mother led the Vantel portion of the ceremony first, tying a woven cord around both their joint wrists, symbolizing a bond that could bend and stretch through hardship but never fully break. She spoke softly in her own language, blessing their union with words that Neera later told him meant something close to, "May your paths remain woven together, through storm and stillness alike." Then came the human portion, simple and small, just Hansu speaking the vows he had written himself, promising to stand beside Neera through every difficulty the galaxy might throw at them, promising to keep fixing broken things together for as long as they both lived. Neera repeated her own vows back to him in careful, improving standard, her voice steady and sure despite the tears shining in her golden eyes. The whole refugee community turned out for the celebration afterward, along with a handful of Alliance historians and engineers who had grown fond of the couple during the months of repair work. Someone had rigged up string lights along the docking bay, and there was music, both human recordings Hansu had found in Iron Dawn's old archive and traditional Vantal songs that Nere's people sang together in soft harmonizing voices. Hansu danced badly and did not care, laughing every time he stepped on Nere's feet, while she laughed right along with him, clearly not minding at all. Late that night, after most of the guests had gone home and only a few close friends remained, sharing quiet drinks under the stars, Nere leaned her head against Hansu's shoulder, looking utterly content. "Never thought," she said softly, "that escape pod tumbling through space would lead to this. To all this happiness." "Neither did I," Hansu admitted, wrapping an arm around her. "Neither did I think a junk ship nobody wanted would turn out to be the best decision I ever made." Nere laughed softly. "Maybe junk just needs right person to see what really there," she said, echoing words she had spoken to him so many months before, back when she had still been afraid and uncertain of her place in his strange, quiet ship. "Maybe so," Hansu agreed, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of her head. They stayed together after that, flying Iron Dawn across the stars on trade routes and, occasionally, rescue missions when word reached them of ships or refugees in distress. Word of the human Dreadnought and her Vantal co-captain spread throughout that region of space, not as wild rumor anymore, but as quiet, respected reputation. People in trouble learned to send distress signals in the hope that Iron Dawn might be close enough to hear them. 2 years after their wedding, they welcomed a daughter into their small family, a bright-eyed girl with her mother's golden eyes and her father's stubborn determination, who grew up running through the wide corridors of the old Dreadnought exactly as her parents once had, learning to fix wiring almost before she learned to properly walk. They named her Harun, a name Hansu had always loved, meaning grace, though Nere liked to joke that stubborn might have been a more accurate choice given how often the toddler insisted on doing repairs herself, tiny hands mimicking her mother's careful movements with tools far too big for her. Harun grew up hearing the story of Iron Dawn told and retold countless times, first as a bedtime tale, later as simple family history she took for granted the way children often do with their parents' most extraordinary moments. She grew up bilingual, switching effortlessly between standard and her mother's soft-clicking native tongue, and she grew up utterly unbothered by the fact that her parents came from 2 entirely different worlds. To her, it was simply normal, simply home, in the way that only a child raised aboard a living, breathing legend could understand. Sometimes, when trade routes brought them near the old refugee base where Nere's family still lived, they would stop for a visit, and Harun would run off with her grandmother to hear stories of Vantal history and songs passed down through generations, while Hansu and Nere sat together on the same observation platform where he had once nervously proposed, watching their daughter's laughter carry across the docking bay. Other times, distress calls still found them, faint and desperate signals from ships in trouble, refugees fleeing danger, small vessels damaged beyond their own ability to repair. Iron Dawn answered every call she could reach, her massive hull as much a beacon of hope now as it had once been a forgotten piece of scrap metal drifting quietly through the dark. Hansu often thought, with quiet pride, that this was exactly the purpose the ship had been built for all those decades ago, a purpose finally fulfilled, decades later than intended, but fulfilled all the same. Iron Dawn, once considered worthless junk that nobody wanted, floating dead and forgotten for 40 years in a scrapyard orbit, became something far greater than anyone could have predicted. She became a home, a shield for those in need, and most importantly, the place where 2 people from entirely different corners of the galaxy found in each other exactly what they had been searching for all along, without ever quite realizing they had been searching at all. Hansu often stood on the old bridge in quiet moments, hand resting against the worn captain's chair, remembering the auctioneer's laughing voice all those years ago. Nobody wanted her, the man had said. Nobody thought she was worth anything at all. He had never been so glad to prove someone wrong. And on quiet evenings, when the stars stretched white and endless outside the viewport, Nero would find him there, slip her hand into his exactly the way she had done in that engine room so long ago, and together they would simply watch the galaxy drift by, content in the knowledge that whatever came next, they would face it exactly as they had faced everything since the day their paths first crossed among the stars, together, unafraid, and utterly certain of the love that had brought them there. Sometimes Harun would join them on those quiet evenings, curling up between her parents on the old bridge floor, listening to them recount, once again, the story of a junk ship nobody wanted and the two strangers who had turned her into the first true dreadnought humanity had ever loved. And every single time, no matter how many times she had heard it before, the little girl would look up at the stars scattered endlessly beyond the viewport and smile, certain, in the simple way only a child can be, that some stories were worth telling forever.